Welcome back to a deep dive with D.Rob Fitness, behind the brand, where I take you behind the scenes to the moments, opportunities, and experiences that have shaped not only my career, but more importantly, me as a person. Sometimes the biggest points in life aren't the ones planned. They're the ones you stumble into because you decide to say yes. Today's story starts with a kid sitting in the audience of a Cirque du Soleil show for the very first time. I had no idea that one performance would spark a journey that would take me through dance, cheerleading, tumbling, acrobatics, live performance, calisthenics, and even Pilates. Looking back, this wasn't just about learning cool tricks. It was about discovering confidence, creativity, and realizing that some of the most rewarding experiences happen when you're willing to chase something that feels completely out of reach. So today, let's take a deep dive into the time I tried to become an acrobat. So you may be wondering what sparked this journey. When I was younger, I had went to a Cirque du Soleil show, and I had never experienced anything like that before. Just seeing the pure athleticism, the strength, and the elegance that they had was just something that was so new to me. When I was younger, my family was really big into randomly like ice skating and gymnastics, and we used to watch that during the Olympics. Was kind of like our go-to sports, and those were a combination of all those things. So seeing that in acrobatics was just something that I initially just gravitated towards, and I just thought that it was so cool to see them being able to pull off all these different tricks. And so as I grew up, always in the back of my mind, I was like, man, in a dream world, I would be an acrobat. And that just planted a seed that I never knew would actually grow to me actually trying to become an acrobat. And so when I was in high school, my senior year, throughout the time, I would randomly do some gymnastic stuff, tumbling, and be active with that because my best friend at the time was a tumbling coach, and so I would go to open gyms every now and then. I wasn't great, but I was decent, and it so happened that she knew of a competitive cheerleading team who a guy had gotten injured a couple of weeks before they were going to national, and they had no alternates, and she threw out my name. And so I got into cheerleading my senior year of high school, and that kind of was really cool to me because it was in that world of acrobatics, and it was competitive as well. And so because I wasn't used to, and we'll get to when I talk about my experience with cheering in college, but it wasn't game day. It wasn't a lot of that fluff stuff. It was actually like we're going out there, we're doing a 2-minute, 3-minute routine, full out tumbling, throwing people in the air, all that stuff, which I thought was so cool. And so I got into it and just instantly loved it. In college, I tried out for the cheerleading team at WSU, and I did not make it because at that time, WSU had just won a national championship or was on the verge of winning a national championship. And so they were the top team. And so people would come and travel from all across the country to go to school at WSU to be on the cheerleading team. So I didn't make it, but I was still active. I was on the rowing team. I was active in a few student organizations, and I was in my fraternity. But being so active while working and being on the rowing team, which had practices early in the morning, my grades were starting to slip because I was putting a little bit too much emphasis on the social aspect and the fun things I was doing and not enough time into school. And so it got to a point because I had a scholarship where I was literally having to either like drop a class and try to get into another like 8-week course, or I was going to lose my scholarship and it was going to be a big ordeal. And so I randomly got into a dance class because I was like, okay, I can get into this. This will be easier, at least I thought, and it could be one of my electives. And so I got into a dance class, a ballroom dance class. This was an 8-week class, and that reignited my spark for dance. And so through that, I kind of slowly got back into more and more into dance, because at the end of the semester, they do a big like dance recital essentially, and all the people perform, all the classes perform. And the director of the dance department actually came talk to me, and he was a guy at the time, and he was like, man, you're pretty good. Have you thought about taking more dance classes? It's, honestly, at that time, I didn't know if he thought that I was actually good or he was just wanting more guys in the dance department. But I took him up on it and started taking things like hip hop, and then start taking modern, then taking jazz, and then even was taking ballet every semester just for fun, elective classes. But during that time as well, so I was starting to plant the seeds into the dance world, because with circus shows, there's obviously components of dance, and as I mentioned before, you need the strength and you need the elegance, and so that was just kind of there. With the cheerleading, I got into the WSU cheerleading squad because there was this huge scandal, which one day I'll maybe have to do it behind the brand, where I tell my side, not my side, but I tell the perspective of where WSU cheerleading squad got their national championship stripped away. And because they had a person that was participating that wasn't a student at WSU. And it's this long story, once again, because I knew people who were on the cheerleading team and people who laughed, and the whole program was basically just kind of destroyed. All the members, essentially, except for a few alternates, like completely left the team, went to different colleges. The coaching staff left. It was in complete shambles. And so they got a random coach, and I mean that respectfully, but they got a coach, and they basically I always joke, if you've seen the movie The Replacements, but they basically got together anybody who had tried out for cheerleading in the past couple of years. They reached out to them. They were just trying to find people to get onto the team. And so they contacted me, and at the time I wasn't doing rowing anymore, and I thought that it would be cool to kind of get back into that world. And so I went and joined the team and started getting back that strength component and kind of learning all of the actual stunts, because like I said, when I first started the competitive cheer, I was just thrown in, and I was just helping, spotting, doing a little bit tumbling passes, but I hadn't actually learned a lot about actually cheer, because I had a couple of weeks to just learn this routine, learn where I need to be at, learn these little things and to assist, but I hadn't actually learned about stunting and all those different things. And so I got into that, and once again, I really enjoyed cheer, especially the competitive cheer side and going to competition. The sideline cheer took a little bit of time to get used to, of being on the sidelines and just like, rah-rah on the side, but I eventually got into it. But through that, I met a stunt partner. Her name is Dorothy, and we became really close friends. And she was kind of, like I said, my stunt partner, and we did a lot of stunting and tumbling together. And she worked at a tumbling gym, and she needed a guy there to help with spotting and just different things like that, because even though she was strong, to help with people doing back tucks and doing these tumbling passes, they need somebody that could really help make sure that the girls and some of the guys were safe. And so she got me hired onto her gym. And so through that, once again, I got to elevate my tumbling skills, because I had access to a tumbling gym and I was helping to coach and everything. But through that opportunity, she got contacted to be a part of a acrobatic performance. And so it was for this big fundraising event called Art Aid, which was a big fundraiser in Wichita to raise money for the arts community. And it would be like a fashion show, there would be dancing, there would be just a whole bunch of performances. And it was a pretty big deal at the time. And so they actually were flying in somebody to kind of go over the show, like a show producer. And so, like I said, he was looking for people because he wanted to do some acrobatic stuff. And so he contacted my friend's Jim. And so then she contacted me and some other people. And so that was my first experience with actually doing acrobatics. And I, once again, was just in love with it. I thought that it was the coolest thing to be learning from this professional how to do these tricks, which acrobatics there's different levels to it. And obviously we weren't doing super advanced stuff, but we were still doing some pretty challenging things because we had really good, not only chemistry, but she was very flexible. I was strong. We had a good partnership. And so from there, we did our first little acrobatic show. And once again, it wasn't anything too special. We were out of the whole show, we were just a couple of minutes and there was a whole bunch of other people. But once again, that ignited the spark. And I was like, oh, this is something that could potentially be something that I do more of because, I was just dipping my toe in it. And once again, I enjoyed it. And so that became an opportunity for me to, when I was at the dance department, they would have undergrad concerts. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I want to choreograph an acro performance and do it at the undergrad concert because at the time, my stunt partner, my acro partner, her boyfriend was also one of my close friends and he was a dance major. And so he had a whole bunch of background and he also was cheering at the time too. And so I was like, this is just like a perfect combination. Why not just use all the resources that are right here in front of me and let's just do it. And so we came up when we decided to do a whole acro performance for my for the undergrad dance concert. And that in itself was such a unique experience where we were trying to look at videos on YouTube and just these different things to try and learn more advanced tricks because we knew some basic tricks and some things that the talent that came in from LA had taught us, but we wanted to, obviously we would need to do more stuff because we were doing a full performance. And so we were studying, practicing, and it was a really challenging, but it was so much fun. And it was fun for me because not only were we learning these tricks, but I also had to come up with a concept for the choreography because it's for a undergrad dance performance. And so there needs to be dance elements, there needed to be a story. And so at the time, I believe there were 6 total performances. And so we kind of knew who the other people who were performing and everything. And a lot of them were doing a lot of like kind of ballet, very beautiful, like, some jazz. And I was just, it taught me to think about what my strengths were and to have a creative voice because I had been used to at that time just doing dance as just a complete hobby, not thinking too much about it. And this forced me to look at it a little bit more serious. And because I had to work and kind of create a vision. And so for me at the time, I was really into wildlife. And I'd been watching a whole bunch of videos for some reason about the praying mantis. And I was like, okay, I want this choreography, I want this routine to be about like a praying mantis. And if you're familiar with the praying mantis, it's kind of like with the women, in my mind, it's kind of like they kind of like seduce the male, and then once they mate, they kill the male. And I was like, I want to do something like that because everybody else is doing like love stuff and very emotional and very like just very soft stuff. And I was like, I want something strong. I want something bold. I want something that's going to be completely different than what everybody else is doing. And so coming up with that and trying to make that vision come to life and making it where you could kind of tell that they're kind of like trying to mate and there's like this tension and everything. I love that part of it. But it also, with that, we had to do completely everything. So we had to come up with the costumes. We had to do the lighting, which that in itself is something you don't think about. And like you think about something like this podcast, there's so much that goes beyond just getting up here and talking, a lot of stuff that goes on with the editing that you don't get to see. And that was the same thing that I experienced with that is, of course, with me being extra like I am, I was like, I don't want just one like standard light color. Like I want the different colors for the different moods to show the progression throughout the dance. And because we're doing acrobatics, because we're doing a lot of stuff, we're not kind of stagnant in one place. I was like, I want to use the full stage. And so the lighting was, pretty challenging, but it was such a rewarding experience when we actually performed it. Because it taught me so much about myself and that like, whoa, you can actually do some of this stuff that you never thought that you could. Because this is me who came in taking a dance class just to keep my scholarship and keep from failing. And now I'm out here choreographing this piece and getting good feedback. Once again, not saying it's the best performance or anything like that, but getting really good feedback and people being like, yeah, I really felt something with it, which I'll have to find that video because I thought I deleted the video and didn't have any copies of it, but maybe in another video, I'll do a reaction video where we react to the performance and everything. But that was such a cool, dope moment. And thinking back into my college and my undergrad, like that was definitely easily one of my top 5 moments from college. And I had like a lot of cool stuff that I did in college, but that was just something that was so special and so meaningful for me. But then after that, my acro partner, she moved, but I got contacted by Art Aid again to possibly do another performance because they knew that I was getting into the world of acrobatics and whatnot. And so I was like, okay, let me try and do this again. And so I actually did it with one of my best friends, Aaron Craven, who is currently touring. He's been, doing a whole bunch of stuff with music theater. He's an amazing actor, but he had a really strong background in dance. And this was right before he was getting ready to move to New York. And so I talked to him and was like, hey, you want to do an acro performance? And he was like, not really. And I was like, but you're going to do it for me. And he was like, I guess. And so we did another acro performance. And this time we performed it, like I said, it was just a duo. We performed it at Art Aid at the Cotillion, which if you aren't familiar with the Cotillion, it is a huge like event venue where they have like concerts and everything. And so we did a performance and it was probably one of my best like choreography's performance because I felt like it was really beautiful. It told like a really cool story. And it just really came together. I felt like not only did the tricks work, but I felt like the movement, the dancing in between was really smooth. And like, once again, I think that it was really, really solid. And so we did that performance. He moved away and they asked me to do it again. And this was like the last Art 8 show that they had. And so this time I did it with another one of my best friends, Renee Huber, who now owns a dance studio. But at the time, I always joked that I was like her crazy dance mom. But I was like, hey, let's do an acro performance. And she was kind of like, I was like, come on, like you've never done an acro performance before. And she, once again, very amazing dancer. I always joke that I think that she's one of the best dancers that I ever like witnessed in person from Wichita State. Like I think that she is an amazing dancer. And so I really wanted to work with her just because at the time I was training her too, and she's been like a little sister to me. And so that was a different experience because when I worked with Aaron, he's not saying Renee isn't professional, but when I work with Aaron, there's just kind of like we get stuff done. With Renee, for some reason, we just bring out the goofiness in each other. And so we were just like joking around a lot. And so our performance was looking pretty good. And then it was like a week before we're going to perform. And we realized that we had never actually done the full performance, like full out. Like we'd done all the tricks separately or taken time in between and hitting them perfectly. But like a week before, we were like, oh, we should like actually do it full out. And we did it full out. And it was a mess. Things were not hitting. It was looking really sloppy. And we were really, really concerned because it wasn't like, oh, we just like one of our tricks didn't hit, but everything else is fine. And, it was like literally once we started to put them all together, nothing was working. And I remember on the show day, she was terrified because we're once again performing at the Cotillion. We were opening up the show. So we were starting the show and we were just so nervous about everything. And we actually were able to make it work. It came together, but it was so rough. And there is part, because once again, there's a video. I might have to do like a little reaction video series to these couple of performances. But there is a point where we do this super complex. It's probably the hardest trick that I could do. And it was where she like goes upside down and her shoulders are connected to my shoulders. And it's like this way where it's supposed to attach and like your shoulders are supposed to lock into place and it's supposed to be secured. And then I walk with her on like with her stabilizing, then she goes into a split and I grab her legs and she moves her hands out of the way, but it needs to be kind of locked in place because she has her hands out and I have my hands on her legs pulling for like an over center split. So there's no like balancing besides her being locked in place. And when we went to start the trick, she wasn't locked into place. And so as I was walking, I'm trying to get her into place. And when we didn't get a chance to even do a run through with the lights and stuff. So we have the lights and you can't see as well because it's like stage is dark and everything. And she's not like really locked into place. But we like somehow pull and like she's not where she needs to be, but we make it work. And like you can see in the video when I get her down and we're like done, like there's just this look of like panic, but just like relief that we made it through because it was a rough performance, but it was so cool. And just that experience of working with these different people to make this creative process happen was just such a dope experience. And it's something like, were the performances the best performances that you've ever seen? No, not anything close. But we had built something that we were really proud of and that we can look back at and be like, that was an experience that we did. And so through doing that, learned a lot. With my training, I had to change my training quite a bit to be adaptable for acrobatics. I did a lot more calisthenics, a lot more handstand, a lot more planks, and a lot more of different things that I don't really train like now, but I had to do that type of training. And I even worked with a Pilates. I had a Pilates private, or a Pilates trainer that I worked with, which is such a full circle moment as me being a Pilates instructor now. But I think back to then because I realized the importance of having that core strength, but also being able to have that mobility and that range of motion, and more importantly, that body control, which Pilates gave me. And so it's just really cool to think that, like once again, while I was through this process and how that has once again transferred over into my training with not only being a Pilates instructor, but just the way that I approach things. And so doing this was just really cool to help me overcome so many different fears. The fears of, being, are you good enough? Like, you could easily talk yourself out of stuff because you can be like, I'm never going to be that elite level of a circus performer. So why even try that? But to me, I was like, well, my end goal wasn't necessarily, and I joked that I did want to be in the circus, but I knew that wasn't necessarily that wasn't going to be my future, but I was able to do that within my local community and have impact, and people would come up to us and be like, you guys should be touring. You guys are incredible after our shows. And we were like, we thought that that was kind of crap, but it just gave you a really good perspective of like, sometimes when we're trying to chase things, we think that if we can't be the top of the top or whatnot, that it's not worth it. And it's like, no, sometimes it's just, you can do these for different reasons. And so just being able to be out there to take things that I'm passionate about and to have these, once again, these different things from cheerleading to the dancing and being able to meld them into one and actually be able to go and be like, hey, I did actual performances at the Cotillion and I I planned a whole performance and did everything for it. That's just like something that is so special that, as we're trying to chase different goals, sometimes we can overlook. And it also taught me about kind of being very confident in my vision and trying to see my vision to life even back then, because once again, when you're doing these different creative things, people might not always see your vision. And so learning how to get people to see my vision or to stand strong in the visions that I have, my beliefs that I have about things that I'm doing, that really helped to solidify that. And so once again, it's just about making sure that you're chasing different passions that you are into and, being fearless in your pursuits. And so I think that this whole experience was just so great. And once again, it helped to shape me into who I am today. And it started off as just like this dream and just kind of like this joke that, that I was going to be a circus performer. But it led me through an incredible journey where I got a lot of insight on myself, and it really did help influence me as a coach today about helping people to chase different passions that they are into. And that's why I always tell people, especially clients that I've been working with for a while, that one of the things after they've been training and showing consistency is, what's something that you've always wanted to do that maybe you just didn't feel like you had the support, or maybe that was just too far out of reach. And I try to work with them to find some kind of way to make that happen or do a version of it. So I've had people who had never done strongman competition and they've always seen it on TV, and we get them to compete in a strongman competition. We get them to do an obstacle course race. We get them to do these different things that they never thought was possible. And it's because of different experiences that I've been able to have within myself with things like acrobatics that I've been able to push on to other people and their visions and their goals. And so if I didn't tackle something that, was somewhat unrealistic and out of reach, I wouldn't be able to push other people to try and do that as well. And so I think that it's just really important to follow your passions, even if it takes you outside of your comfort zone. So with that, thank you for joining me for another episode of Deep Dive Behind the Brand. And I really hope that this story helps to inspire you to really go after things that you are passionate with and gives you permission to really think outside of the box. And until next time, make sure to continue to train smarter, optimize your performance, and still continue to work on your fitness blueprint.